crazy mother. Hey! Stay away from me!
Keith, you know better. I'm telling you, you dumb son of a bitch. I'm trying to save your life.
Welcome back to the channel, folks. It's been a minute. Sorry for the extended hiatus. I'm not going to pretend this was some carefully planned break to recharge my creative batteries, or find myself or whatever. Life just kind of happened, my new job got busy, and before I knew it, the channel was on pause longer than I intended. So I figured if I was going to come back, I should probably do it with a game that feels familiar. So what better series to return to than one I felt I was done with, Saints Row. I've already covered the first 3 games on the channel, and each time it's been a good excuse to not just talk about the games themselves, but how a series can change its identity over time, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Which brings us to Saints Row 4. I've mentioned this in my previous Saints Row videos, but I wasn't a fan of the 4th game in the series. The 3rd was my introduction to Saints Row, and I liked it a lot. It wasn't quite on the level of GTA, but it did enough to stand out and not feel like another GTA clone. So once I beat it, I immediately hopped into Saints Row 4. While its predecessor was loud, ridiculous, and over the top, this one felt like it went too far. Too wacky, too detached from its roots, too focused and one up in itself than actually being a Saints Row game. But enough time has passed that I wanted to revisit it. Not to force myself to like it, and not to tear it apart out of spite, but to actually meet it on its own terms and figure out what it's trying to be. Because by the time Saints Row 4 released, the series wasn't just changing anymore, it had completely abandoned the idea of being another GTA clone, trying to do its own thing to stand out, with 4 being more of a superhero game than the usual open sandbox crime sim. I've gotten multiple comments in the past saying that if you look at Saints Row 4 more as a superhero game, closer to Infamous or Prototype, it's not half bad. But as a Saints Row game, yeah, it's not that great. It's not the logical conclusion of everything Volition had been building toward, mainly because this was originally meant to be DLC for Saints Row the 3rd, before it was fleshed out into the 4th installment. And unfortunately, while I walked away from 4 with a slightly better opinion of it now that I gave it a fair chance, it really does feel like DLC, an expansion of the last game and not an evolution of the series. Before getting into Saints Row 4, it's worth quickly revisiting where the series left off with Saints Row the 3rd. By the time that game begins, the Saints are no longer just a street gang. 5 years after Saints Row 2, they're fully transformed into a global brand. Movies, merchandise, energy drinks, the whole thing. They're celebrities first and criminals second, and the game leans hard into that shift. That status quo upended when the Saints find themselves stranded in Steelport, a city firmly controlled by an international crime syndicate simply called the Syndicate. Cut off from their empire, they're forced to do what they've done before, rebuild from scratch, take over territory and dismantle whoever's standing in their way. That includes not just the Syndicate itself, but STAG, a heavily militarized paramilitary force brought in under the guise of restoring order, and very quickly becoming just another occupying power. Tonally, the 3rd is where Saints Row fully commits to excess. It's louder, sillier, and far more self-aware than the previous games. And for the most part, that works. The set pieces are memorable, the humor is all over the place, but occasionally lands. And Steelport, while less vibrant than Stillwater, serves as a functional playground for the chaos. But it's also where the series starts to lose some of its grounding. The biggest example being the decision to kill off Johnny Gat, easily the most popular character in the franchise, off-screen, early on, and largely for shock value. It's a moment that signals a shift in priorities. Emotional continuity takes a backseat to spectacle. I still enjoyed Saints Row the 3rd quite a bit. It's fun, polished, and knows how to deliver big, ridiculous moments. But it's also a game where Saints Row stops feeling like a crime series that's getting sillier, and starts feeling like a parody that's actively running away from its roots. And that's exactly where Saints Row 4 picks up.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that every now and again a situation arises that defies explanation. And so it was with the ascension of the 3rd Street Saints. When the Saints made their presence known to the world in 2006, they were decried for being pretenders to the throne. The people were confused. Were the Saints sociopathic killing machines hell-bent on destruction? Or puckish rogues living a life of mirth and whimsy? The Saints needed clarity of purpose, and so the course was set. More fun, less mercy killing. This simple choice revitalized the Saints, transforming them from a degenerate street gang into beloved pop culture icons. But even then, the Saints were not satisfied. For it's one thing to be revered as a hero, it is another to be a hero. And that, my friends, is where our journey begins.
Saints Row 4 wastes absolutely no time letting you know that escalation is still the name of the game. A few months after the events of Saints Row III, the Saints are no longer fighting for territory or clashing with rival gangs. They're being called in to stop a terrorist attack. Former STAG Commander Cyrus Temple is back, threatening Washington, D.C. with a nuclear missile, and the Saints are now the ones tasked with taking him down. This also confirms the Save Shondi ending as the canonical ending for Saints Row III. The boss, Shondi, and Pierce team up with MI6 agent Asha. Together with Timu Lara Croft here, the Saints storm Cyrus's base, toss his ass in a vat of molten steel, and the boss will hitch a ride on the nuke to disable it before it hits DC. With that one song from Armageddon playing while the boss is on the rocket. You know the one. It plays during that weird Animal Cracker scene with Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler. The whole sequence is long, stupid, and framed like a blockbuster finale, except this is just the opening act. The game then jumps forward 5 years. Thanks to their very public heroics, the boss is elected President of the United States. Keith David, award-winning actor, voice of the Arbiter, and the voice of Jules in the first 2 Saints Row games, lays himself as the boss's vice president, while the rest of the Saints take on various roles in the presidential cabinet. On the surface, this isn't a bad premise at all. In fact, it feels like the logical next step for Saints Row. The series starts with a street gang fighting for relevance in Stillwater, shifts to them rebuilding and cementing their criminal empire, then turns its leads into celebrities. So taking control of the government is just the next step in that progression. And considering how many criminals and celebrities have thrown their hats into politics, it's not exactly a stretch. The problem is that Saints Row 4 has no interest in exploring or having fun with that idea. Instead of satirizing the transition from outlaw celebrity to political authority, or having fun with the Saints' antics screwing up the country, the game treats the presidency like a throwaway gag. And that decision says a lot about what Saints Row 4 wants to be, and what it's willing to leave behind to get there. The Saints as politicians idea gets discarded almost immediately when aliens invade Earth. Zinyak, leader of the Zin Empire, is our new big bad. He immediately stomps the boss, abducts the Saints, and effortlessly defeats the forces of humanity. This isn't a full-on alien invasion plot though, as it also mixes elements from the Matrix. The Saints are all thrown into a simulated version of Steelport, with their real bodies trapped on Zinyak's ship. The main goal of the game is the boss tracking down their homies, freeing them from the Matrix, and building a resistance to take down Zinyak once and for all. Also, you get superpowers you can use while in the simulation. While not inherently a bad idea, it feels like too much of an escalation from Saints Row III. That game wasn't super realistic in tone or setting. It did introduce clones and zombies into the series, but it was somewhat grounded. Jumping into a save humanity, fight off the alien invaders plot feels too much, even for this series. The boss becoming president and the scenes running the government amounts to nothing, and is only brought up a handful of times. Shit, most characters still refer to the boss as the boss, too. Aliens invading feels like it should have been the stinger for Saints Row 4, not its gimmick. The premise of the Saints running the government has a lot of potential. The new setting could have been a fictionalized version of Washington, D.C. The story could have been about the boss trying to win re-election, either by cleaning up DC, winning over the opposition, or wiping them out, or stopping a terrorist group occupying the nation's capital, like Olympus Has Fallen or White House Down. It's the kind of premise that makes it easy to shake things up while keeping the series' foundation. You know, the whole take out the rival factions and build up your territory gameplay. I could see an idea like that doing really well, while the political jokes practically write themselves. Unfortunately, Saints Row 4 ends up feeling more detached from the series' roots, and very underwhelming in its execution of new ideas, leaning more towards the DLC it started life as than an evolution of the series.
This is a problem.
It's not a problem.
You alienated part of America. I alienated crazy people.
You couldn't resist, could you?
Jeez, it's not you two.
This is a problem.
I keep trying to explain that, but the president won't listen.
Poverty is a problem. Apartheid is a problem. This is just a couple of...
Here's the latest approval poll.
After defeating Cyrus in the opening and getting elected to the White House, the game hands back control to you and lets you customize the boss however you want. Like Saints Row III, the character creator is still pretty robust. You can choose the boss's gender, voice, race, body type, and tweak a bunch of sliders to make them as attractive or as horrifying as you feel like. Just like the last two games, I made the boss a woman again, and tried to keep her appearance consistent with how I designed her previously, including sticking with Laura Bailey as her voice actress, who, once again, delivers a stellar performance. Since Saints Row 4's big gimmick is superpowers, I leaned into the superhero angle and modeled the boss after a blonde blazer from Dispatch. But Fuzzy, I'm sure some of you are saying, wouldn't it make more sense for her to look like Invisigal, since Laura Bailey voices her? And yeah, that would make sense. But outside of the hair, the customization tools don't really let you recreate Invisigal that well. And more importantly, I'm lazy and didn't feel like running around looking for the right fit. Also, I'm Team Blazer, and I ship her with Robert over Invisigal, so this was never really up for debate.
Hey, what? Goodness me, what a dream.
After getting absolutely bodied by Zinyak, the boss wakes up in a 1950s Leave It to Beaver version of Steelport. Everything is happy, peaceful, and aggressively wholesome. She's married to Shondi, who's suddenly way more mellowed out and spends her time making pancakes, and talking about how nice everything is. And yikes, the boss's eating animation is fucking cursed. If it wasn't already painfully obvious, something is seriously wrong with this Pleasantville-ass version of Steelport. And it doesn't take long for the boss to catch on. Kinsey eventually hacks into the system and reveals what's actually going on. The boss is trapped inside a personalized simulation designed to keep her passive and compliant. The solution, naturally, is to cause as much mayhem as possible, by breaking the rules of the simulation and pushing it past its limits. The illusion starts to crack, and that's when the truth comes out. This 1950s Steelport is just one layer of a much bigger prison. The rest of the Saints are trapped elsewhere inside virtual Steelport. And man, virtual Steelport really sucks ass. Ignoring the fact that it's just the same Steelport map from Saints Row III, with a half-assed new coat of paint, this version of the city feels emptier and more lifeless, with noticeably less to do. I'll come back to that in a bit though, because the game still isn't done walking us through the tutorial. Kinsey takes over as your guide, reintroducing the basics, where to buy guns, how to deal with the police, and how to take down flashpoint towers, which are Saints Row 4's version of enemy outposts. They're functional, but are way easier and lazier in their design than anything the series has ever done. You're also shown where to buy new clothes, where to pimp your ride, and somewhere in the middle of all this, the boss tries to get Kinsey to sing opposites attract with her.
We come together. Come on, your turn, Kinsey. And you know it ain't fiction.
No.
Kinsey, you're gonna sing for your commander-in-chief.
Fuck that.
That could have been a real bonding experience.
Come on, Kinsey, lighten up. Pierce would have said yes in a heartbeat. The real shift happens once the boss starts collecting data clusters, glitched chunks of junk data scattered throughout the city. Absorbing them lets her break the rules of the simulation. And that's when you unlock your first two superpowers, Super Sprint and Super Jump. The boss is now faster than a speeding bullet, stronger than a locomotive, and able to leap over tall buildings in a single bound. And while that sounds great, and honestly it is fun at first, these powers are a double-edged sword. On one hand, zooming around virtual Steelport like you're the Flash, or bouncing across rooftops like the Hulk is genuinely awesome. On the other hand, it makes driving, and by extension customizing your ride, completely pointless. Why would you even bother stealing a car when it's always faster to just run wherever you need to go? Even with Super Sprint tied to a stamina meter, it's still the better option almost every time. The only moments where you'd actually force a drive are in the handful of missions that don't give you a choice. There's a reason most games lock things like fast travel or flight behind story progression. If you can just blitz across the entire map right from the start, you're never encouraged to slow down, explore, or engage with optional content. Not that Saints Row 4 gives you much reason to do any of that anyway, but I'll come back to that shortly. For now, let's wrap up the tutorial. Zinyak, being far too lazy and arrogant to deal with the boss himself, releases a group of alien criminals to handle the problem for him. These guys serve as the wardens of the simulation, popping up periodically throughout the story as mid-boss encounters. They're a step up above the standard alien grunts, partly because they don't just sit still while I unload bullets into them, but also because each one comes equipped with a superpower of their own. And once you beat them, the boss takes that power for herself by jumping into them and making them explode from the inside. You know, like Neo does to Agent Smith at the end of The Matrix. Not long after that, Kinsey finally cracks the simulation open for good, and builds a way out. The boss escapes virtual Steelport and wakes up in the real world, naked, submerged in a capsule full of goo, aboard Zinyak's ship. And it turns out she's just one of hundreds, maybe thousands of humans being stored there. Unlike The Matrix, where Neo wakes up, gets flushed down the toilet, and is immediately rescued by Morpheus and the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar, the boss has to fight her way out completely on her own. She's covered in goo, naked, and immediately surrounded by Zinyak's forces. After punching, shooting, and generally murdering her way through the ship, Kinsey and Keith David swoop in at the last second to save her. The escape turns into a lackluster on-rails flying sequence sent to What Is Love by Hathaway. You know, one of the greatest Euro dance songs ever made. A defining hit of the 1990s. The song from the Night at Roxbury SNL skit everyone knows. Does it fit the scene at all? Not really. Do I care? Absolutely not. I love this song. With the Saints back together, the plan is simple. Head back to Earth, regroup, and figure out what to do next. Unfortunately, Zinyak has other ideas. Before they can make it home, he decides to give the planet the full Alderaan treatment.
Voicemail?
You want me to leave a message? It's all gone.
Well, I'd say this was a productive day.
Fucking monster.
Oh, don't act surprised. I told you this would happen.
You killed 7 billion people.
Whoops.
So, with Earth gone, and no help coming from the Saints who are still planetside, R.I.P. Oleg, and Viola I guess, the boss shifts gears. The plan now is to head back into the simulation, track down the Saints who were abducted, free them one by one, and then take Zinyak down together to avenge the planet. And that's basically the rest of the story. For the next 10 or so hours, the plot barely moves. Zinyak is effectively the only villain in the game, and there's no real escalation along the way. He doesn't have a right-hand man, no meaningful lieutenants, no gang structure you need to dismantle before getting to him. The wardens don't really count. They don't talk, they don't have names, and there's nothing about them that makes them feel like actual characters. Saints Row 4 ends up being a string of loosely connected missions that mostly boil down to saving your homies. And look, the plots of the previous Saints Row games were never anything amazing, but they worked. Each rival gang was distinct, usually led by an interesting or threatening boss. There was a clear sense of progression as you tore down their territory piece by piece. That arc almost always ended with a big, satisfying mission that wiped them out for good. Even Saints Row III, despite being a noticeable downgrade compared to the first two games, still followed that structure and it worked. Saints Row 4 doesn't, because you start the game already absurdly powerful, and because the villain technically wins right out of the gate by blowing up Earth, the whole thing feels less like a new story and more like an extended epilogue of Saints Row III. I know this game started life as a DLC before becoming a full release, but Volition didn't do enough to make it feel like a complete standalone Saints Row experience. And honestly, the story is only one of its problems. The bigger one is virtual Steelport. The original Steelport was already a downgrade compared to Stillwater, but at least it had some personality. The Morningstar, Deckers, and Luchadores controlled different districts, and their presence gave each area a distinct identity. Virtual Steelport, on the other hand, is basically a carbon copy of the map with a Zen-themed coat of paint slapped on top. It's lazy, it clashes hard with all the random sci-fi text scattered everywhere, and somehow it manages to feel even more lifeless, with less to do than before. Which brings us to the side content. Don't worry, this won't take long. First, the map is absolutely littered with more data clusters, which you collect to upgrade your superpowers. They're obviously useful, but there are way too many of them. It feels excessive, not rewarding. There's also character audio logs scattered around, which I'm convinced exist as a joke, or maybe as a jab at games that overuse audio logs. They don't flesh out the Saints or expand the story. Most of them just repeat information we already know, or exist solely for a quick gag. You can also acquire businesses like in previous games, but instead of buying them outright, you have to complete a hacking minigame for every single one. To the game's credit, each hacking puzzle is different, but it's still repetitive as hell. And more importantly, the incentive just isn't there. All the essential stuff, weapons, clothes, car customization, is unlocked during the tutorial. Sure, owning businesses increases your passive income, but mission rewards and side activities already give you more than enough to buy everything you need. Honestly, I spent most of the game leaning on my superpowers, calling in homies for backup and using whatever alien weapons Zinyak troops dropped. And at no point did it feel like I was missing out on anything by ignoring the rest. And finally, this brings us to the side activities and diversions.
You will need to leap from platform to platform. By changing the red platforms to blue, the power connection to this simulation will remain open. The closer you land to the center, the stronger the connection.
Man, it's honestly depressing to see how far this stuff has fallen since the first Saints Row. Side content used to feel like the backbone of the series. It wasn't just filler, it was how you made money, how you earned respect, how you took over territory, and how you unlock meaningful bonuses for sticking with an activity all the way through. In Saints Row 4, it just feels bare bones. There are 12 side activities total, with a handful of returning favorites. Fraud is back, where you ragdoll yourself into cars and buildings to hit an insurance payout. Fight Club returns as well, letting you brawl in arena-style matches. Blazing makes another appearance too, but instead of racing in a wheelchair or on a Tron bike, you're sprinting on foot using Super Sprint. Professor Genki's Super Ethical Reality Climax gets replaced by Mind Over Murder, and instead of shooting your way through a chaotic obstacle course, you're using telekinesis to fling objects through different colored rings. It's fine, but it's nowhere near as memorable. Mayhem returns as well, the activity where you cause as much destruction as possible under a time limit, but this time it's split into 5 separate variants. There's the regular version, plus versions where you cause destruction using a tank, a UFO, a mech suit, and telekinesis. Functionally, it's the same idea repeated over and over. On top of that, you've got 3 rift challenges. Platform rifts are basic platforming challenges where you climb Zin towers. Speed rifts are basically blazing again, just on a linear track. And telekinesis rifts have you catching and throwing orbs at targets. And that's kind of it. What happened to the creativity and variety the side content used to have? Stuff like Septic Avenger, Destruction Derby, Escort, or Fuzz. Sure, not all of them were certified hood classics, and some of them could get absolutely brutal at higher tiers, but they were distinct. They felt like actual ideas, not variations on the same mechanic. Here, so much of the side content feels low effort that I'm convinced it either wasn't meant to be in the game at all, or was thrown together at the last minute once the developers realized just how empty virtual Steelport feels. If it wasn't for this video, I probably would have ignored the side content entirely. And that's not something I ever thought I'd say about a Saints Row game. Alright, I've been negative long enough, let's talk about something Saints Row 4 actually does pretty well. The superpowers. Even if they clash hard with the series' third-person shooting roots, they do shake things up in a fun way. Super Sprint and Super Jump in particular completely change how you move through the map. And for better or worse, they become the backbone of the entire experience. Upgrading Super Sprint lets you run faster, run across water, sprint up walls, use less stamina, and eventually turn yourself into a human tornado that sends anything in your path flying. Later on, you unlock a passive ability called Force Field, which shields you from damage while you're sprinting. Super Jump focuses more on verticality. You can jump higher, air dash, and glide across the city, and its passive ability, Death from Above, lets you stop mid-air, aim, and slam down onto enemies like a human meteor. After defeating your first warden, you unlock your next major power, Blast, along with its first element, Freeze. Blast fires a wave of energy that's great for clearing out groups, and upgrading it increases its damage, area of effect, and reduces cooldowns. It's simple, effective, and honestly the power you'll probably lean on the most. The element you have equipped changes how Blast behaves. Freeze locks enemies in place and lets you shatter the weaker ones. Fire causes damage over time and makes enemies panic. Mind Control temporarily turns enemies into allies. Explosion does heavy damage and triggers chain reactions. And Bling treats some damage for money. Next up is Telekinesis, will let you lift people or objects and fling them at whatever you feel like. Its elements include Force, which boosts impact damage, Lightning, which chains electricity to nearby targets, and Lifesteal, which drains enemy health to heal yourself. Telekinesis isn't bad, but it's a bit clunky, and leaves you exposed while you're using it, which makes it harder to rely on in bigger fights. Then there's Stomp, an AoE attack where you slam the ground and damage enemies around you. Its elements include Rock, which sends enemies flying, Gravity, which suspends them in midair, Shrink, which weakens them by literally making them smaller, and Explosion, which launches enemies skyward before slamming them back down. Stomp is basically an up-close version of Blast, Great damage and crowd control, but useless against anything that's airborne or too far away. The final power you unlock is Buff, which applies passive effects to your weapons, ammo, and any homies fighting alongside you. The element you choose changes the effect: fire bullets, freezing rounds, lightning chains, and so on. Buff is easily the most underwhelming power in the game. It mostly exists so you can punch through certain enemy force fields with guns instead of waiting for your other powers to recharge. And by the end of the game, that limitation barely matters. Once you've upgraded your abilities, cooldowns stop being an issue, and your powers are strong enough to wipe out huge groups of enemies in seconds. And that's really the problem. While the superpowers are fun, chaotic, and generally balanced well enough that they don't completely trivialize combat, they still feel half-baked. For one, they're a little clunky to use, especially on PC, where the default keybinds for switching powers are mapped to the function keys. That's mostly a me problem, but it doesn't help. More importantly, there's no real incentive to experiment. There's no meaningful reason to switch elements based on enemy type, no system that encourages cycling powers depending on the situation, and no payoff for mixing abilities together. Outside of Super Sprint and Super Jump, there's basically zero synergy between your powers. You don't create new effects by chaining abilities together, and switching between them mid-fight feels awkward. So eventually you settle into a routine, spamming blast, swapping to guns while it's on cooldown, and repeating the process. And that pretty much sums up Saints Row 4's core issue. It can't properly balance its third-person shooting with its new superpower system. The powers feel like a gimmick, something added to make the game feel different from the last one, but not deep enough to do anything interesting with. It's fun, sure, but if you were looking for a genuinely strong superhero experience around the time this game came out, you were better off playing Prototype or Infamous. I kinda debated wrapping up the video here, since the flat story and simple mission design doesn't really give me much to talk about. But since the majority of the game's missions are about rescuing our homies, I might as well talk about them for a bit. First, you can now romance your homies.
Hey Kinsey, you wanna fuck?
Let's go.
What did you expect? Some kind of relationship mechanic where you take them out on dates, give them gifts, learn more about your homies while slowly increasing your relationship level till they're willing to bang? Maybe even unlocking some exclusive perk? Come on, this is Saints Row. It's just there for a quick gag. It's not even worth complaining about. Though some of the romance interactions can be pretty funny. Like when romancing her, the boss will ask Shandi, someone with a high body count as established in Saints Row 2, why the two of them never hooked up. Shandi's answer? All the boss had to do was ask and she'd give up those cheeks. Nice.
Hope you don't mind hepatitis.
What?
Like the boss, each of the Saints is trapped inside a personalized simulation. These virtual prisons are shaped around their regrets, unresolved trauma, deep-seated fears, or in some cases, just a dumb gag. Early on, Kinsey detects one of the Saints trapped inside a simulation set on an airplane, the same exact plane the Saints were on when they were first confronted by the Syndicate in Saints Row III. The boss immediately jumps to the conclusion that it has to be Johnny Gat, since that's the last place we saw him before he was supposedly killed off-screen. Why she would leap to that conclusion is honestly beyond me. In-universe, Johnny has been dead for 5 years, and his death was the emotional fuel behind the Saints' entire vendetta against the Syndicate. Kinsey even tells her not to get her hopes up. Naturally, the boss ignores the advice completely and charges straight into the simulation. After fighting through the Syndicate's version of the plane, the boss discovers who the Saint trapped inside is. And surprise, it's not Johnny.
Johnny, I let you down. I let us all down. We never should have ran. We should have stayed and fought, but we couldn't because of me. And I know people say it's not my fault, but if the boss didn't have to protect me, you would be standing here right now. I'm so sorry, Johnny.
This should be a heavy moment, and on paper it kinda is, but it never really lands for me. The game frames this as Shandi grappling with guilt over Johnny's death, convinced that she was too weak and needed saving, that if she had been stronger, things might have turned out differently. The problem is, that's not who Shandi was. In Saints Row 2, Shandi was resourceful as hell. She gathered intel on the Sons of Samedi's drug operation, actively helped dismantle a gang, and pulled her weight throughout the campaign. The one time she did need saving was when she was captured by her ex-boyfriend Veteran Child. And even then, that was more about emotional manipulation than incompetence. So this idea that her hardened, more aggressive persona in the third was a mask covering some long-standing inferiority complex just doesn't track. It feels like the game is retroactively rewriting her character to justify a tonal shift it already made. And I genuinely can't tell whether the writers are aware of this or accidentally gaslighting the player, because as the level goes on, the simulation recreates the veteran child fight from Saints Row 2, complete with the original version of Shaundi. After saving her again, the game splits the two Shaundis into two separate characters, who then proceed to lay into each other about why they both suck. It feels like the developers are responding directly to complaints about both versions of Shaundi, but instead of picking a lane, they try to have it both ways so no one gets mad. And at this point, I have to stop myself and ask, what the fuck am I doing? The writing in this game, and honestly the last one too, is way too stupid for me to be caring this much. But unfortunately, Shaundi isn't the only character whose portrayal feels wildly inconsistent. Next up, returning from the original Saints Row, it's Benjamin motherfucking King. Back in the first game, King was the leader of the Vice Kings, arguably the most powerful gang in Stillwater. He wasn't just muscle, he had political connections, ties to the police and the mayor, and an old-school, calculated approach to running a criminal empire. His downfall didn't come from weakness, but from restraint. When he refused to rush into war with the Saints, his own lieutenants overthrew him, forcing King to team up with Johnny and the Playa to dismantle his own gang. Fast forward to Saints Row 4, and King has been hired to run the boss's presidential campaign, eventually becoming chief of staff. Originally voiced by Michael Clark Duncan, the role is now taken over by Terry Crews due to Duncan's passing. And look, no disrespect to Terry Crews, he's not doing a bad job, but he's completely miscast. His voice is too distinct and too different from Michael Clark Duncan's, and it fundamentally changes how the character comes across. Honestly, someone like Kevin Michael Richardson would have been a much better fit. He's got the range and the kind of deep commanding presence King originally had. But even setting the voice aside, King just doesn't fit here. His whole archetype, the professional, composed crime lord hiding behind a respectable public persona, clashes hard with Saints Row 4's tone, and the boss's increasingly cartoonish behavior. When King tries to offer advice or warn the boss about the dumb shit they're doing, he doesn't come off as a trusted advisor. He sounds like a tired dad scolding their idiot kid. And that role is already filled. Keith David is right there. King's inclusion feels less like a meaningful return, and more like nostalgia bait. His personal simulation takes us back to Stillwater, specifically the original 3rd Street Church where the Saints were formed. King is trapped in a loop, being killed over and over again by the Vice Kings, led by his lieutenants Big Tony and Tanya. And while I won't lie, it is cool to return to 3rd Street and gun down waves of Vice Kings. None of this lines up with who King actually was. Back in the original game, when his lieutenants turned on him, King didn't fold. He was outnumbered, sure, but he was composed, fighting back, and making them work for it until we arrived. His biggest flaw was never cowardice, it was pride. He believed his reputation alone would keep his people in line, and he was too focused on maintaining his public image to get his hands dirty early enough. You could argue that being killed over and over again in a simulation has broken his sanity, but let's be real, Saints Row 4 isn't exactly interested in that level of consistency. Alright, lightning round time. Let's run through the rest of the homies. First up is Sid. A sentient AI trapped inside a floating orb, Sid wants out of the simulation and wants to experience the real world. Which is funny considering the real world is currently a pile of space dust. Still, as far as game characters go, Sid's fine, just underutilized. Then there's Matt Miller, former leader of the Deckers from the last game, who's trapped inside an old-school DOS adventure game. The level is a cute concept, but Matt himself still has the personality of an energy drink mascot. Asha, the MI6 agent introduced in the opening, is next. Her simulation is a stealth level where she repeatedly fails a mission to assassinate an evil version of the boss. Or eviler version, I guess. The whole thing is a pretty blatant parody of Metal Gear Solid, right down to the tone and structure. It's dumb, but it's at least committed to the bit. Pierce is back too, and his simulation is built entirely around his guilt for selling out and shilling energy drinks in the last game. So naturally his level involves fighting a kaiju-sized sentient can of Saints Flow, named Paul. Yeah, I don't get it either. It's stupid, it's fun, it also goes on way too long, and the hitbox for Paul's laser beams is completely fucked. I died way more than I should have during that opening fight, and not in a fun way. And then, it's the big one. The myth, the legend, Johnny Gat is back. No fake outs this time. Turns out Johnny didn't actually die in Saints Row the 3rd. He was abducted by Zinyak before the invasion, because, and I'm not making this up, Johnny was too badass and too much of a threat. Do I have strong feelings about this reveal? Not really. His off-screen death was always stupid, and obviously meant to be a fake-out, and this isn't exactly a series I come to for grounded storytelling anymore, so it's not worth getting mad about. That said, I will give Saints Row 4 some credit here, because Johnny's simulation is easily one of the strongest character moments in the game. Johnny is trapped inside a Streets of Rage style beat-em-up, reliving his failure to save Aisha. Side note, it's kind of impressive how the boss still looks like my custom character in these pixel art sections. I'm guessing it's just forced perspective and filters slapped on the 3D models, but still. First, we chase after Warren and the Vice Kings, echoing Saints Row 1, then we go after Junichi and the Ronin from Saints Row 2. And if you didn't watch my video on that game, Johnny failed. Aisha was kidnapped and Junichi beheaded her. Johnny blamed himself for her death, not just because he failed to save her, but because Junichi was able to take her hostage by following Johnny back to her place. That guilt hangs over him for the rest of the Ronin storyline. And when Shogo shows up at Aisha's funeral trying to start shit, Johnny tries to show restraint. He doesn't want to fight out of respect for her. When he's finally pushed too far and beats Shogo to a pulp, burying him alive, there's no satisfaction there. It's a hollow victory. Man, remember when the series had actual stakes and consequences? Since Saints Row III killed Johnny off before they could do anything meaningful with him, we never got to see whether he'd moved on or forgiven himself for Aisha's death. And now we know, he didn't. By breaking him out of the simulation, we finally give Johnny some closure, which is then explained to us by Rowdy Piper for some reason.
His journey finally over, Johnny Gat was once again able to hold Aisha in his arms. But the reunion was soon over, as the street tough remembered the tragedy that claimed his love so many years ago. Thanks for playing.
Unlike the rest of the Saints, Kinsey and Keith David don't get dedicated personal simulation levels, at least not at first, since they were free before the boss. Kinsey escaped on her own, then freed Keith David, and eventually helped free the boss. Kinsey breaking out makes sense enough. She knew about the incoming invasion, something the boss completely ignored, and she's a tech genius. So yeah, I buy that she studied Zintac and brute forced her way out. For most of the game, Kinsey serves as mission control. She's barking orders, hacking systems, explaining objectives, the usual. Keith David, on the other hand, doesn't really do much. He mostly exists to voice concern over the increasingly dumb shit the boss is doing. It isn't until the last third of the game, once all the Saints have been reunited, that Keith finally steps into the spotlight. The crew meets inside the simulation to hash out a plan to take down Zinyak once and for all, when the meeting gets ambushed. Zin forces pour in, the Saints fight their way out looking for an exit, and just as things are wrapping up, Zinyak himself shows up and kidnaps Kinsey. When everyone wakes up back on the ship, the Zin are already boarding it. The Saints fight them off, tensions flare, fingers start getting pointed, and someone had to have sold them out. And with only one person unaccounted for? Yeah, it's Keith David. If you played Saints Row 1 and 2, where Keith voiced Jules, you probably saw this shocking betrayal coming from a mile away. Tracking Keith David down inside the simulation, now happily spreading Zin propaganda, the boss confronts him about switching sides. He doesn't deny it. He blames the boss for getting Earth blown up by refusing to take the alien invasion seriously. And Keith David doesn't believe the Saints stand a chance against the Zin. So when Zinyak offered to restore Earth and make Keith David president for life inside the simulation, yeah, he took the deal. To the game's credit, this doesn't drag on forever. After a chase and a few fights, Keith saves the boss from Zin's forces, and with the help of Rowdy Piper, we quite literally beat some sense into him. His entire betrayal arc lasts maybe 45 minutes. Now I know what some of you are thinking, but Fuzzy, what the hell does WWE legend Rowdy Piper have to do with any of this? And yes, it's a reference, the same one Duke Nukem is making when he says, "I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum." I'm not convinced Saints Row 4's target audience in 2013 actually caught that, but honestly it just makes the absurdity of Rowdy Piper beating the shit out of Keith David even better.
Keith, I think you have some unresolved issues.
You don't know half of it, kid. Now come on, we've got to save Kinsey.
Wish we could call Roddy for help.
No one calls Roddy for help. He shows up where he's needed most. Let's go.
Once Keith's back on our side, he fills us in on where Kinsey is being held. And it's that same 1950s Leave It to Beaver-ass simulation the boss was trapped in earlier. Also, for some reason, a virtual version of Cyrus Temple is running it. Blah blah blah, something something, the power of dubstep. Kinsey gets freed and we can finally move on to actually taking Zinyak down. Almost, because I completely forgot we still need to talk about loyalty missions. After you bring a homie back into the fold, each of them unlocks an optional mission where the boss teams up with them to hang out and deal with whatever lingering bullshit they haven't worked through yet. These missions serve two purposes. One, completing them turns your homies into super homies, letting them use superpowers when you call them in. And two, you won't unlock the true ending unless you finish all of them. Not that the true ending is worth it, but the loyalty missions themselves are at least fun. Shandi's loyalty mission has you teaming up with her and past Shandi to finally reconcile their differences by ruining veteran child Set. After freeing Shandi from her simulation, he apparently became self-aware or some shit and broke loose into the main virtual Steelport. And yeah, this also applies to most of the simulated villains you run into. Pierce's loyalty mission has you taking out virtual duplicates of the Brotherhood from Saints Row 2, including their leader, Mr. Worf. And like the real homie he is, Pierce doesn't hesitate to sing along with the boss when Opposites Attract plays on the radio. Assuming I don't get instantly copyright claimed, I'll play a short snippet of that. They also sing Just a Friend by Biz Markie, until Zinyak ruins it. Benjamin King's loyalty mission has us stopping Tanya from spreading a virus through the simulation. That turns anyone infected into sex slaves. Then we spend an obnoxious amount of time chasing and killing a powered up Tanya. Matt Miller's loyalty mission is joining him in LARPing his Nightblade fanfiction. Asha's loyalty mission has you playing bodyguard for Tammy Tolliver, who previously showed up in the Genki Bowl DLC from the last game. Johnny's loyalty mission has him bonding with the boss as they run through Professor Genki's super ethical reality climax, catching him up on everything that happened while he was supposedly dead. And finally, Kinsey's loyalty mission has us getting revenge on Virtual Cyrus Temple for putting her in a poodle skirt. I can't really speak to how useful super homies actually are in combat, mostly because I forgot calling homies for backup was even a thing for most of the game. And because the boss is already completely busted on her own, having them show up just adds chaos on top of chaos, to the point where it's hard to tell what the hell is even happening. That said, I do like that everyone gets their own hero suit. Shandi and Johnny's are pretty bland, they mostly look like riot police. Matt Miller is just straight out cosplaying as Nightblade. Asha is sexy Princess Jasmine. Sorry, sexier Princess Jasmine. Benjamin King looks like Morpheus. Keith David is dressed like Lando Calrissian. Pierce easily has the best strip, looking like Raiden from Mortal Kombat. And Kinsey, oof. Damn, she looks good. Alright, let's wrap things up. After collecting a bunch of tech junk, Kinsey builds a digital key that can finally shut down Zinyak's simulation. First, the Saints have to escort the key through virtual Steelport while fighting off Sin forces. Then you defend Sid as he guides the key to the simulation's core. Once the Matrix gets unplugged, the Saints take the fight straight to Zinyak on his ship. Along the way, the boss stumbles across a full-on Iron Man suit that lets you use her superpowers outside the simulation. She quotes Transformers the movie while You Got the Touch by Stan Bush plays, as she marches towards Zinyak's throne room.
One shall stand, one shall fall. Why throw away your life so recklessly? That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron.
Look, I love Transformers, but this reference makes no sense here. This is a game about superpowers. You're wearing a mech suit, and you're heading into a final boss fight. Iron Man by Black Sabbath would have fit way better. Anyways, after the boss beats the shit out of Zinyak, he hops into a giant mech for a multi-phase final boss fight. In phase 1, he floats around firing lasers at ya. After losing about half his health, he throws up his shield and can only be damaged by grabbing the explosive SIDS he summons and hurling them back at him. Phase 3 has you destroying the generators powering his shield to finally finish him off. The final phase can actually be pretty rough. Zinyak spawns an endless wave of minions to protect the generators, and unlike Virtual Steelport, these enemies don't drop health, so you're constantly ducking into cover, waiting for your regenerating health to kick in, and praying you get enough time to destroy each generator before everything respawns. Thankfully, near the end, the rest of the Saints show up to even the odds. Once Zinyak's mech goes down, the boss lays the smack down on his candy ass and literally rips his head off. Seeing their glorious leader defeated, the Zin Empire kneels before their new ruler. Cue the music.
This is how we do it! Da, 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 da.
Unfortunately, I can't play This Is How We Do It without getting copyright claimed, So enjoy the Saints dancing to whatever legally safe music I throw over it instead.
Got a demon, what am I? It's time for me to choose my path. The power of my God hand, no evildoer will get past. Hand to hand or fist to fist, kick your nuts or twist your wrist. God power keeps my pimp hand strong, so trust me or you won't last very long. Dragon kick your ass into the Milky Way.
As stupid as most of this game has been, I actually like the dance ending. Most of the Saints have some real moves too. Except Asha. Come on, that's not dancing. That's runway model shit. And Johnny? What are those whack-ass moves? The floating eyeball with no legs dances better than you, bro. And damn, Kinsey's a real freak on the dance floor.
God damn.
If you complete all the loyalty missions, you unlock the true ending. The Saints discover that Zinyak had a time machine. They can't use it to bring back Earth, or undo the evil that is Aku, but the credits show them just fucking around throughout different time periods, meeting various historical figures. Honestly, that wouldn't have been a terrible direction for the series to go next, or at least as DLC. Speaking of DLC, I guess I should talk about the two expansions. First is Enter the Dominatrix, which was originally planned as DLC for Saints Row the Third before parts of it were folded into this game. This version is a meta storyline where the Saints and Zinyak explain what the original vision was supposed to be. After Zinyak is killed at the start of the DLC, the AI running the simulation takes over, calling itself the Dominatrix. It seizes control of the Zin Empire and fights the Saints. Donnie from the first Saints Row shows up to help, and Zemos is trapped in the simulation too. And Space Raptors save the day at the end. It's 5 nonsense missions you can beat in under an hour. The other DLC has the Saints helping Santa Claus save Christmas. And that's it. And that was Saints Row 4. So, what did I think? I'm kinda mixed. It's not outright terrible, I had some fun with it, but for most of the runtime, I felt like I was just going through the motions. I don't have an issue with the game being stupid. There are plenty of dumb games I enjoyed turning my brain off for. The problem isn't aliens or being trapped in the Matrix. The problem is that it feels like DLC, and not a real sequel. If Saints Row 4 has stayed as DLC for the third, I wouldn't have much to complain about. But as a full game and the next installment in the series, it's seriously underwhelming. Saints Row the Third already stripped back a lot of what made the first two games special. Saints Row 4 strips back what made that game fun. It dilutes everything into nonsense, pop culture references, and nostalgia baiting better moments from earlier entries. The open world crime sandbox clashes hard with the superpowered gameplay. Virtual Steelport sucks ass. It's a literal inferior copy of an already weaker city. Side content feels lazy and pointless. Saints Row 4 feels dated, a sequel content with cruising on a gimmick instead of evolving into something better. It sold well at launch, but it's aged poorly, especially when you remember that GTA 5 dropped just a month later. And look, I've got plenty of problems with GTA 5, I made a nearly 4-hour video about them, but no one can say it doesn't feel like Grand Theft Auto. Memorable characters, strong missions, meaningful side content, and a massive world that feels alive, not to mention GTA Online. GTA 5 became so monumental that 13 years later, as we're finally nearing GTA 6, hopefully, no other series managed to fill that open world crime game void. Some got close, most tripped over themselves. While plenty of fans will argue Saints Row the Third marked the series' downfall, Saints Row 4 is what sealed it for me. Proof the series had no direction, no identity, happy to stick with what worked, but unwilling to refine it, shaving off its rough edges until it became a bland gimmick. I don't hate this game, but I'm sure as shit never playing it again. And that's the video. Thanks for watching, folks. And special thanks to my channel members and patrons, including Alfred Correa, Augie Doggy, Bailey Morrison, Brad Taylor, Chris Gore, Eric Lee, Gonkdroid the Critic, Kerr Guardians, Lucas Caballero, Luke Minter, Skillfuse, SR Powa, Thunder Muffin, and Reckless Nerd. Thanks for sticking with me during this extended hiatus. I'll try to do more now for you guys this year so I can feel like I really earned your support. Man, does it feel good to be back. I was worried for a bit I forgot how to put together a video. Not going to lie, while I didn't hate Saints Row 4, I did have some trouble staying engaged. So, as motivation, I was playing Claire Obscura Expedition 33 at the same time. I set a rule that I couldn't play it unless I recorded footage, scripted, or edited this video. And it worked, and I'm really digging Expedition 33. I think I'm somewhere near the end of Act 2. I've also been replaying Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Switch too. Game looks good and runs like a dream in both docked and handheld. I haven't played the game since I first beat it, so it was nice to return to it and familiarize myself with it again. Predictably, I fell in love with Aerith again, so can't wait for my heart to break next time I play Rebirth. My backlog of games has only gotten worse too, so there's still so much I need to start or finish. Really wish so many RPGs hadn't dropped last year, or dropping this year. I'm pretty settled into my new job, and I've adjusted to the daily routine, along with getting used to commuting again. Only a half-hour drive, so not too bad. Still, it'll be a few months till I can work from home a few days out of the week, and I'm still trying to work out a schedule for my free time. Depending on the day, I'm drained by the time I get home, so I usually just want to chill and watch something before I play a game. Due to that, it's going to take a while till I can work out a good schedule for working on videos for the channel. I think right now I'll commit to one video a month while staying active in my community posts to stay in touch and update you on what's next. Since it's short, the next video will be on Gat Out of Hell. I'm not expecting great things, but I see a lot of people prefer the expansion compared to 4, so maybe it's not too bad. After that, I'm really not sure. Guess it depends on how these first 2 videos perform. I know a lot of you want to see me suffer through Saints Row 2022, but I may play something else first if only to keep myself from getting bored. I really want to talk about the Hitman series, so I'll suck it up and play Hitman Codename 47. Suffering and frustration is usually a great way for getting views on a video, right? I'm still trying to work out how to tackle the Yakuza 2 video. I think the problem with that video is I lost so much momentum due to my job search and starting this new job, so I might just restart my playthrough to get things going again. From there, I don't know. Probably just throw out some feelers, see what other series I could explore on the channel. Hopefully stuff that isn't going to take me hundreds of hours to play. I did buy Watch Dogs Legion for like $5, so maybe it's worth jumping into that. Especially now since it looks like Watch Dogs is dead as a franchise. Now that I'm more financially sound, and don't need to stress about a video performing well, I was thinking of finally discussing a game that means a lot to me. Valhalla. If you ever wondered who that random purple-haired chick who pops up in the end cards is, she's not my anime waifu OC. She's Jill Stingray, the lead of Valhalla. I don't want to get into it right now, but it's a game that found me at a less than stellar moment in my life, and the whole game is just a vibe that just really clicks with me. But we'll see how things go. Like a lot of bigger creators, I'm mulling over the idea of launching a second channel, where I can make smaller videos, maybe discussing and giving my opinions on current gaming news. Simpler stuff that's easier to get out in between my bigger projects, and leans less on writing a script and just me being me, mostly unfiltered. I'll get your feedback on it and bounce ideas on what to discuss. But I've rambled on long enough. So again, thanks for watching, folks. It feels great to be back. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment down below. Which is your favorite Saints Row game? Where did the series fall off for you? Do you think the series is dead for good? Post your thoughts. We're slowly moving up that road to 100k subs, and that sweet, sweet silver plaque. So, if you're new to the channel, I'd love your support, and if you subscribed, check out whatever video is recommended here at the end. I'm FuzzySlippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.